Right, so for today's class, we are basically going to look at form data and request files. Okay, so before now, we've basically been working with request bodies, where we basically send in JSON format, okay, and then we process this data and send back the appropriate or the desired response. So today we're going to look at form data, another means of getting information or data from the client. Okay, but now we're going to look at the differences, okay, between form data and request body. Okay, so we're going to look at how these two things work. So quickly, we just the usual steps. We set up our we put on our project and then put on our server. Then we kickstart with the coding. All right. So like I said, I keep repeating this process in the class. Usually, I could have just done this for the class, but I keep repeating this in the class for some reasons. Okay. Right, so quickly, we'll do that. And we already know our project folder is my desktop. Yours could be anywhere. So ours is here in desktop. So I'll open this up in command prompt, whatever now, whichever operating system you're using. And then we turn on our virtual environment. So we just change directory into that. And then we turn on our environment. And then we change directory to our main folder. And then we open this up in VS Code. So that process is more like a recurring process. Okay, so we keep doing that almost in the entire classes. So I don't think that should be new to any of us. Okay, it's VS Code is still loading some files. All right, so this was where we left off in our last class. So we looked at the header, we looked at query, we looked at cookie, we looked at other parameters. All right, so for today's class, we are still gonna continue with this file, okay? But for today's class, we're gonna focus on form data, form data. So now let me put this up. All right, so what exactly is form data? All right, what exactly is form data, and how is it different from our request body? All right, so form data is basically data that is being submitted directly from the HTML files. Okay, so form data are basically information that is being gotten from input fields in an HTML file and is being sent directly to your API or to your endpoint. That's basically what form data is. Okay. So these informations when we go to a web page, probably CodeCamp web page, and then you try to actually log in, right? You see a field where you can type in your email alongside with your password, right? Now, those information can be gotten directly from that field, from this field, and sent directly to your endpoint. Now, those information that is being derived directly from that field and sent directly to your endpoint is what we call form data, right? They're from the form, they're from HTML form directly. Are we following? You understand?
Yes, sir.
Right. So for every HTML or for every web page, all right, that actually contains a form, all right, or that actually have a field, there is a tab called form behind it, right? So basically, let me just put up a small HTML file here. So let's say we have an HTML file called index.html, right? And I put on my HTML here, boilerplate, right? So basically, in every web application, right, we have these um, markup language, which we actually talked about in our previous class when we were about starting Fast API. So we we had a simple glance at how the front end looks like, okay? And then I said that every front end pages or most web pages that we see are built from HTML themselves. Okay, so these are like the skeleton of what I see, right? Now those designs and those animations and actions actually consists of CSS and JavaScript, but then every other thing, but then the skeleton of the entire page is what is your HTML. So within that skeleton or within your form, okay, if you go to CodeCamp and then you try to log into elements, it's that wonderful, that beautiful form. Now behind that form, there's a tag called form. Yes, there's a tag called form. And then within this form is where you have those input fields. All right. Within this form, you have input fields. So you could have a couple of input fields. Let's say we have one like a div. Within this div, you can have something like a label. It doesn't really matter, but you put email here. Then down here you have an input, probably an input that is specifically meant for email, right? And then you might have something else again. So usually I believe the form is email and password. So you can also have password. It's not going to be as wonderful as what we have there, but then it will help us in understanding the whole concept. All right, so I'll open up this HTML file in our browser. So the HTML file lives here. So I'll quickly open this up in our browser. So this is what we have. Not like I say, it's not going to be too wonderful like what we have there. But then what do we see there? We see fields. We can basically what type, right? We can type our email and our password. Okay. And then but then the important thing here in this form is your method and your action. All right. So like I said, when sending information to a server, okay, we are basically carrying out a certain HTTP method. All right. And there are several of them, but then in a case where you're sending information, you're mostly likely going to do a post request, and which is what we have here. So method here in this form actually signify the kind of request you intend to make to a specific server or to a specific endpoint. So where the action there actually carry what that endpoint. So or that URL, where are you submitting this entire input to? Which in that case, that here will come in, and here will be our API endpoint. And then you will say that okay, so after that we will have another div, and then we will have a button called a submit button. So this submit button would basically do what? Encode all the fields here and send it to the specified URL. So I'll put in a button here, and this will be a submit button. And then I'll just say submit. Right. So this is more like a skeleton of a form. Right. So now I can then apply my CSS and JavaScript to make this beautiful enough for the client, right? But I won't go into that because that's not what we are here for. Okay. So what we are interested here is the fact that there is a tab called what form, and then form can actually contain a lot of input, and which in this case we have what about two input field, right? And then this input must more music on moreexclusive.com. And then this input must actually carry a name, because this name attribute for each input is what we use to do what to identify each of those fields. So in this case, I could actually call this email, and I could actually call this password. Password. All right. So see this name tag as a dictionary item. We have what the key alongside what the value. Where the key here is what is the name attribute, and the value is what is the actual value that we type into this field. Okay. Now once we click on this submit button, what happens is that this form, all right, will do what will encode itself and do what and submit it or send it to what to the specific endpoint or to the specific action, which in this case we are referring what to a URL, right? And ideally, right, we intend to do what to specify our endpoints there. So you can say that in this case, we don't need to do what to structure this information in a JSON standard to do what to send it to our endpoint. We simply send it directly from this form as such. So when we do that, all right, when we do that, that information that is coming through through that method is what we call form data. Are we okay? Are we okay? Do we understand what?
Please, sir, can you come again with the form data you said doing what we cause the form data?
Okay. All right. Let me let me start again. All right. Let me say that again. All right. So before now, all right, before now, when we intend to make a post request, or when we intend to do what to send information to our API, what do? We structure that information in what in a JSON standard. Take for instance, let's put up our postman. All right, let's put up our postman. Let's put up our postman, and while that is coming up, okay. So let me basically construct what a JSON data here. Now let's assume that back let's use our elements for instance. Okay. Now when you go to your elements and you intend to do what to log in into your account, it is required that what that you insert your email and what and your password, right? Now this can actually be submitted directly from your form, like the moment you click on submit, right? The moment you click on submit, that could just be sent directly from that form, right? But then you as the client, you may not actually know that, right? Yours is that you click on submit and something happened behind the scene and you get validated or you get authenticated, and then you have what you have access to your dashboard. Okay, but then behind the scene, this information can be sent in two ways, right? It can either be sent directly from that form as it is, or it can be, or these values can be extracted from that form and then structure it in what in a JSON format and being what sent to a specific URL. So in a situation where this information is being structured in this format like this, where you have your email and then you can have sample at gmail.com, and you could also have password, and then within password we could also have probably 1 2 3 4 5, right, as password. So this information can be sent in this structure, and this structure, right, is what we actually know as JSON structure, right? A a standard format for exchanging information. So now this information is being sent from a specific domain, right, to another what to another domain for what for processing. And in a situation where it's being sent to another domain for what for processing, we have to do what we have to construct it in a way that what it is generally accepted, which is what a JSON standard like this. So now when we send a kind of this kind of structure, right, in fast API, we actually know as what as request body, right? So it comes in this structure, request body. It comes in this structure, which we actually treated that. Okay. But then I'm also saying that at times we may actually want to do what submit the just send the information directly from what from a field like from an HTML form field like this, all right, where this information is not being derived from this form, all right. We just click on the submit button and everything what is sent to a specific route. Okay, so that's the whole essence of what of the form tag, right? So the form tag does what wraps input and what and submit it to what to a specified action, which in this case we have a form tag here, and then within this form tag we have what a lot of input fields here, right? But two of them here. So now once you click on this submit, right, by default, what happens is that your browser will package or will encode this input and do what and send it to what to a specified action or a specified URL in that the one that's being specified for this form tag. That action is by default. It's a default action in what in HTML. Okay, you don't have to write any code for that action. That happens automatically. Now, once you have form, and then within your form you have what fields alongside with a submit button. Once that button is being clicked, that information can be sent to a specified URL. So I'm not saying that in a situation where this information, right, that's being typed in a form field is not actually derived and what structured in a JSON format like this, right? But then it's being sent directly as it is to a specified URL. That those kind of data is what we call form data. Do you understand now? Do you understand? Do we understand? All right, so the silence means that what that we understand. All right. So now in that case, all right, in that case, Fast API does what process this kind of data differently. All right. So it processes them what differently. All right. So in this situation, we will not use what we will not use Pydantic. That's because this data is being sent directly from what from a form field, right? And information that's being sent from a form field is usually encoded in what a form data encoding. All right. So to access those information, we do it differently in Fast API. And how do we do this? Similar to what we've been doing before now, right? So basically, what I'll just copy this man here, right? And then we edit it down here. Okay. So assuming this is what our LMS LMS login, assuming, right? LMS login, sorry, a function name, function variable can actually have an hyphen. All right, and then within this is your what is your LMS what dashboard dashboard. All right. So now in this situation now, okay, we intend to do what we intend to get form data, basically what information that is being typed from what from the HTML like this and is being what submitted directly from what from this field. So in that case, what we could do is similar to how we handled headers and cookie and rest of them and query and the pattern. We also have an object, a fast API object that actually handles form. So basically, what we could just do is what is we simply in the same directory where we have fast API path, query, and the rest of them, where we import fast API, we can also import what form. So we have form, right? We have form, and we can do what we can also use this form to do what to let fast API know that this particular route is what is expecting what form data, what is expecting form data. So in this case, we have I will assume that we have what that we have two two fields, right? Two form fields, which is what the email field alongside what with the password field, right? So in that case, we simply need to create room for what for those two fields So we go back to our script or our fast API code, and then we simply create fields for those two fields. So I'll let this one be what our email field, okay, our email field, and and this and then if you leave it the way it is, okay, fast API will automatically think that this email what it represents what a cookie because that's what we're doing what we are specifying here, saying that what that we are expecting a type of string and it should be what a cookie parameter. So you can change it to what to a form parameter and in this way Fast API would know that what that we're not expecting what a request body, but then we are expecting what a form data, which we actually try that out and see if we actually send a request body down here, if Fast API will actually recognize that. Okay, we test that out and see. All right, so and that will be that for what for email, and then we can do what we can also create another field for what we can also create another field for the password. So just change it from here to what to password. And first password is we are putting it to what to be a string and also a what a form parameter. And that we could just put this word email and we could also return a password, which in actual sense, which is not what we want to do. We wouldn't want to do what to return the password, but this is so that we could just see what is happening here. Okay, but then we should do this in production. Never return a user password. All right. After user have sent you your password, please do not return it back to the user. But then we look at how we can also handle that in the coming classes. All right, so with that, we have our route. So let's change this to what to post because we are submitting. Remember, when submitting, we are posting. When requesting, we are getting. So those are the two HTTP requests that we focus on. So that's not that when we are requesting for a resource, that's get. When we are sending to a server, this is what that is request. request. All right, so let's use this, and then let's try this out. All right, do not save. Okay, so let's turn on our server and let's do what, let's kickstart and let's see if this works. So I will edit, put on our server using what, UVCon. You're already familiar with this map by now. So UVCon, and then our file name, in this case is main, followed by what, the instance of fast API, which in this case is what, app. As usual, I'll specify my own port because conflict. So I specify 7070 and dash dash reload. And so you don't need to put port if you're actually working just fine. So if you don't have port conflict, you don't have to put port there. All right, so we go back to this, and then let's make a post request. So I'll change it to post, and then I'll paste our route, and the actual route here is what is LMS dashboard. Right, LMS dashboard. Going back to this, put that there. Right, so that is where we want to do what, to make the post request to. So if I actually make this request, right, of course we should do what, we are expecting an error, right? But to make this request, we are expecting an error. So if I make this request now, this will tell us that we are expecting what, email and what, and password. And this email and password must be a form data, right? A form data. So we could see that this route, in order to make a post request to this route, that it means that that you are sending in what, email and password. It's the same thing happens when you try to make a post request to wherever your email and password is going to. What happens that they'll tell you that those parameters are what are required, right? Those parameters are what are required. So same thing happens here. So when we try to make a post request to that route, we are expecting you that request is coming what, with your email and what, and password. Okay, so that's what's happening here. But since we also specify that this thing here, or this that the email and password must be of form fields. So let's try and do what, and send in a request body and see if it actually works. Okay, so you could say that the processing of these things are different. This thing comes in different encoding, right? It comes in different encoding. So I will just go to body, all right, and then Postman actually gives us room, right? So where we can do what, simulate form fields, all right, and which is what here this section we have form data, right? So you don't necessarily need to build out a full application to do what, to test out this form data. Postman has that section that you can what that you can use to actually what, to actually simulate that form fields, all right. But then we won't use that. We do what, we go ahead and do what, and send in a JSON object. So let's go back and let's do that, and let's see if okay, I deleted that out. All right, so we send in a JSON body as usual. Okay, so in this case, we have an email. Remember, your key, all right, your JSON key must be the same with what you specify in your fast API, right? So I'll put in your sample at gmail.com. That happens to be our user email, and then the password in this case would also be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that is that. So let's send it in and let's see. You are still having what, the same error, or the same error, right? Now that information was sent, but then it was sent what, in a different encoding, right? And our endpoint what is expecting what, a form data, very separate destination compared to what, to your JSON data. All right. So that means that when we use form, we are basically doing what, we are expecting that the client is doing what, is sending that man directly from the form field, which in this case, okay, if we were to work with the front end guys, right? So it means that the front end guys, what they need to do is basically carry our endpoint and do what, and replace it with the action, and that is just that. And then when they click on that submit, the information, this field to do will be sent directly to what, our endpoint, and then we process and we give back the appropriate information, or the appropriate or the desired response. Okay, that's basically what they have to do. As simple blah blah. Okay. So like I said, we don't need to do what to build out a full application to do what to test that out. Postman gives us to do what to simulate that. So we go back to form data, and then we do what we basically put what our key, which in this case will be email. Remember, in Postman, your key is basically like your name field, like your name attribute, right? Your name attribute, which is this is what I mean by name attribute. This name attribute that I have for each of these fields, that name attribute, that's what is key in Postman. So your key signify those names attribute, which, and in this case, we want what? We want email. So I put back what sample at gmail.com, and then I have password, and then password are basically you don't, and then for form field you don't basically you don't need to know what to put it, because everything that comes through the form fields comes in quotes, right? Except otherwise, so it comes in quotes. So you can say that what you have is what is a text, the text field. So it means that automatically what you're typing there is seen in quotes, right? So you don't have to put them in quotes. And that's for that. And then once you click on submit, then they should do what they should actually go through, and then we do what we had the the desired response. Question. 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 Silence means no question. Silence means no question. Okay. All right. So like I said, tax will come, right? They're expecting.
Hello, sir, can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
Okay, so the question I wanted to ask, how does that
Okay.
affect our ability to take, for instance, now we are in the form, the index.html,
Okay.
and we want to post something into the what's it called, the API. How
Okay.
does that affect it? Take for instance now, we launch the index.html on or
Okay.
HTML on Google, and then we type
Okay.
in this thing. How does it post it, and how do we see that it was posted?
Okay.
Mm.
All right. So okay. So first of all, right. First of all, uh, you won't be the one to actually deploy HTML and the index.html, right? But if you are to actually deploy your index.html, right, online, it means that you also have to do what to deploy your route, because so far all our routes are locally, means that it's only you and you alone that can access that route. Anything outside your PC cannot access that route. So if your index is online, it means that your route should be what they should be online as well. So when you actually deploy your route, which we will get to, when you deploy your APIs, right? You have what you have a the domain, right? You have a specific domain, and once you insert your your API endpoint to your form action attribute, and then you click on submit. All right. Now, the reason why, how we know that it's actually being submitted, the fact that you can actually collect those information as it were typed from here, and then you can process it. So it means that information was being submitted successfully. Do you understand? Right. So now we're not using what since these APIs are local, right? They are locally um, hosted because at the moment they live in your machine. So Postman can do work, can actually make requests to those local routes. Okay, they can make requests to those local routes, and which is what we did. All right, we made a request to it. This is our endpoint, our full endpoint, right? Because your endpoint will consist of what of your protocol, which in this case HTTPS or HTTP, right? And then followed by what your domain, which in this case is this man here. Once you deploy this, Imagine you will get a specific domain, say CodeCamp.com or and so on and so forth. Followed by what? Followed by the by the relative path, which in this case is elements dashboard, right? That is our full path, our full API path. And then this API path, we cannot make a GET request to it because at the moment this part only supports a post request. Okay. Now this part also requires that if you're making a post request to that part, that you must do was send in your email and password from a form, from HTML form, right? From a web form, all right? HTML form or web form, both of them are the same thing, all right? And in this case, we don't have a working application that has that is deployed that we can do what that we can make that request. And even if it's deployed, we can still make the request because our APIs are still local. So we can still make that request. So in that case, we now use what Postman. Postman can simulate that form effect or that form data for us, which in this case is what use what the form data section in the request section of Postman. So where you have key and value, keys are like your name in your HTML field, and the values are like the actual values that what the user is being typed in. Now the fact that I have submitted this and I can do what get those what I've typed, which in this case this is what we typed sample and this email, right? This is what we actually typed. The fact that I can get that, it means that information was what was being wrapped, bundled, and encoded and sent to that route, and we can access it from that end, process it and do what and send back the desired output. You understand? The person that asked the question, do you understand?
But I will look into it later. I will look into the video later.
All right. Any other question?
Sir, please, I have a question.
Absolutely.
Please, what's really the difference between your request body and form data? Because this same syntax you are showing us is the same syntax you use for the form data is the second method you use for the request body.
The same syntax we used for form body, right, is the same syntax we used for request data. Is that the question?
Yes, that was really the difference between both of them.
All right, so the major difference between both of them is the way those informations are being encoded. Now, when you send in a JSON data, or okay, let's start with form. When you send in a form data, all right, when you send in a form data from let me say from a web app from a web application, those information that you've typed in is usually encoded in. Let me type this out. It is usually encoded as application slash x dash www dash form dash URL encode. All right, so that's how form data are being encoded. So now when you specify that this parameter is a form parameter, Fast API automatically indicates for this specific encoding, right? For that specific encoding. But then when you send a JSON standard, right? A JSON standard, your request body, which is usually a JSON format, right? Now that is actually being encoded in. Let me put this hash here. This is for form data. Form data. But for encoded, this should be encoded. For a JSON standard kind of information, all right, it is usually encoded in application/JSON. Two different kinds of encoding. Right. So now when you now specify that this particular parameter, right, should be executing a request body, then basically what fast API is looking for is application/JSON encoding. That's just a major difference. Both of them are they look alike. The difference is the way each of these information is being encoded. And what exactly is encoding from an app? It's basically what the transformation of information to what to a coded form, as simple as that. As simple as that. So now the way this information is being sent in a coded form would determine how this information should be viewed. Right. Should be viewed. Now let's assume that I have let's say two kinds of encoding. Say I have encoding one, and let's say for encoding one, I can have a bunch of coded text, right? But then at the end of it all, this text will always end in what? In capital X, Y, Z. And then I can have encoding two that can do what that encoding two that can have as many text as possible, but then at the end of it all, it ends with ABC, right? And this could be my first encoding, a different kind of encoding, and this could be a different kind of encoding, right? Now the thing is that within this coded text, if I decode them, I will have the actual information, right? Now the method used in encoding these things will determine how I will decode them. So since though both of them are the same, the JSON and the form data are almost the same, but then the method of encoding them will determine the method of decoding them. So now when I specify here that that the email here should be a form data, it means that that data that is coming in is going to be encoded in this manner, right? In that manner. So as such, Fast API have it in mind that it will be decoding it in using that same manner, right? So now there's no way you will send in let's say encoding tool here, right? And then first if I do what will now come and use this one to actually decode them. That will not work. That will not work. So that's basically the major difference. The way this information is being encoded. That's just the difference between both of them. Do you understand? Do we understand? So it's up to you, right, as a developer to pick which one is convenient or which one fits the task at hand, right? So if form data fit the task at hand, then go with form data. If JSON fit the task at hand, then go with JSON. Now the thing is that usually if we put up these APIs, right, and then someone else intend to make a request from our API, but then the person is also building an API. Do you think it's possible for that person to send form data? It's a general question. All right, now let's have it. Let's go back to our previous task, our currency converter task. Currency converter task, right? We made an API call, right? We made an okay. That would not actually cover that. That because that was the get request. So going back to the question I asked, let's assume that we put up this endpoint, right? And someone else is intending to make a post request to our endpoint, but the person is also building an API. Do you think the person would send in form data given the explanation that I just did? It's a general question. We have an existing API. existing API, which in this case, our own APIs, right? Our API, right? And then let's say, let's pick someone here. And then let's say that Mr. Duncan, right, is building another API, a new API, a new API. But then Mr. Duncan has to make a post request. Mr. Duncan has to make a post request to our existing API. Right? Mr. Duncan has to make a post request from his own API to what to our existing API. Do you think Mr. Duncan will send any form data? Mr. Duncan will not send any form data. Why? The reason that Mr. Duncan is basically doing what? Making a request from what? From a script. Mr. Duncan is not has no means of doing of making that push request from a web application. Neither can he make that request directly from a phone. So as such, his request is definitely going to be what application slash just a different kind of what encoding. But then when we go to what to our elements, and then we type in our email alongside with what our password. Then we click on what submit. That information is what is sent from where it's sent from a phone. As such, that information is being that it's being sent from what from a different method, right? Not his method though, but from a different method. Question. Question. Right. So the question means that we fully understand what is going on here. That we fully understand what exactly is going on here. All right. Okay. No problem. Okay, so one more thing before we wrap it up for tonight. One more thing before we wrap it up for tonight. We're gonna look at what we have. We're gonna look at request files, right? Request file because what do we have to look at request files? The thing is that if you are working with form, there's also what a field called form field. Sorry, there's also a form. Sorry, a field called what file field, right? File field, and that field actually is used to submit files, right? It's used to submit files. But then you may also be wondering, how do you also submit files using JSON standard? We can only submit the URL of that file using JSON standard. Using JSON standard. But in a situation where you want to actually get the actual file and probably process it, then in that case we can use what we can use form web application and then do what submit the form directly from there down to our API. So in that case, we have to look at how we can process that kind of information, that kind of files. All right. So how do we have a file field? Let me just put up a simple one here. So in your web browser, there's an option where you can do one where you can upload your profile picture, right? For most of us that indulge in uploading profile pictures. So there's a section or there's a field that you can do a click and then you select what you can select a file from your device and upload it and call this man picture. Right. And then that particular field in HTML is known as file field or a file field. And then when you go back to your browser and then you refresh this, you will see a new field where you can choose a file. And then when you click on choose a file, it opens up your file explorer where you can select an actual file, right? Where you can select an actual image and do what and submit, right? And submit it, right? So that is basically what that field does. And in this case, if you are also submitting a file in HTML, we also have to add ink type. We also have to add ink type, right? So you could see that ink type is basically encryption type. So for a form field, we have three three encryption type, and you see the first one that I listed out, right? That is by default, and that encryption there, or that and the other sorry that encoding type there is by default in HTML. So even if you don't specify it, that happens by default. But in a situation where you also be submitting a file, right? Because files actually work in the way the web browser actually handle files is different from when you're submitting text text data, right? It's different from the way you're submitting text data. So in a case where you're intending to do what to submit files in HTML, then you have to do what then you have to specify a different int type, a different what int type that will do what that will include the encoding of files. If not, that file will not do what that file will not get sent to the server side, right? That file will not get sent to the server side. Though it might appear sent on the client side, but then behind the scene, that file is not being sent. Right? That file is not being carried along. Right. So this particular encoding type works for text, but in a situation where there's files, they need to specify what a multi-part slash form data, right? And that encryption type is what we cover up for files. All right. So in that case, how would you do what in a situation where these files, right, where whatever file is being uploaded here is going to be sent directly to our API? How do we handle this file? Because to handle file is quite different from the rest of them, right? How do we handle it? Then Fast API has provided means of handling files, and it's similar to what we've been doing all along. It's similar to that. It's similar to that. So basically, what you will do is also import this a function called upload file, right? The function called in the same directory where you have your path, query, header, and the rest of them. There's also what we call upload file. Upload file is a function that will handle whatsoever file upload that is coming directly from form. Right? That's coming because the only place you can actually upload a file is from a form. In my case, because if I'm uploading a file with a JSON, and then basically what it means that I have that file somewhere, and basically what I'm sending in the JSON is what is the URL of that file, and not the actual file itself. Right? It's not possible to send the actual file itself via what via a JSON format. So what you could do is what you set in the URL of where that file is being uploaded, or where that file what is being located. All right. So with upload file, we can do what we can handle that. So what we could do, we have just come back here, and then I could say we are also expecting what a picture. And then we know that if we leave picture like that, that will be seen as what that will be seen as query parameter, right? So what we could just do is we could just say that this similar to what we did here. We just copy this now and put it down there. So usually when you're uploading file, it is always expected that that file is coming in bytes. But like I said, this man here will not actually change anything, right? That man there won't actually control anything. All right, and then I'll now specify whether this man here should be an upload file parameter. An upload file parameter. So it means that if I try again to make another post request down here, that this will not actually go through because we are also expecting that you send in what a picture or a file, right? A file precisely, and that file we send as picture, right? So I think we're still having something down somewhere. Okay. let's see, I think you're having, okay, sorry. So for file, you basically just specify file without actually invoking it. So you just specify file without actually invoking it. For file upload, you don't invoke that function, right? Just specify that should be what a file field. So you don't have to actually invoke it. You don't have to actually invoke that. With that, you are good to go. With that, you are good to go. So I would simply just in this case, I would also return that file as expected. Also return the file. All right, so I'll call this file, or probably I'll call this picture, and then I'll just return picture for now. All right, so let's go back and let's try this again and let's see if that actually works for us. So if we try to make another request, a post request to that, then we have a missing or a missing field. And in this case, is what is file. So Fast API, sorry, Postman also provide room to do what to simulate that as well. So we can simulate the uploading of files. So basically, you need to specify that field called picture, right? And then for picture, we simply need to change this text to a file. So you can switch from text to file, right? So you just switch this from text to file, and then click on select file, and then you can select from uploading from your local machine. Which in this case, I'll just simply just select any random file here, and then I'll do what? Click on send. And it says something is still missing. Let's be sure that we have all we want. So this should be picture. What is sending? Right, so that didn't go through. So I think we are having server problem again. So we need to quit our server and bring it back up again. Switch this to CMD. UVcon. Up dash it's dash reload. Server issues. All right, so let's go back and let's try it again. So I'll switch this to 8080 instead of 7070. And then let's fire this up. And that is still not working. Let's see. Setup process entities. Let's confirm that that is what we have. Confirm we have that. And then send this. It's missing, but it's there. Uh, Sorry, this is the internal server problem. All right, let's give it a try one more time. Change it to 50/50. And it's still considered missing. seeing it as a query parameter. Sorry about that. I think I've seen the error there. This shouldn't be a query parameter. It should be okay. This shouldn't be a query parameter. This should be a file upload. For some reason, it's seeing it as a query parameter. Let's be sure of what is happening there. So I could simply just remove this and basically just specify that this is that. Right, so that should get it sorted out. All right, so let's put this again, one more trial. And that actually did went through. But then you can see that it's sending a lot of information about the file, like the file name, the size, the header, and the rest of them. So basically what we could do, because this is a file, right? So we Fast API have some file attributes, right? Some attribute that works on upload file. One of them is you could actually return the file name or probably the content type or the file size itself. So what I want to basically do is instead of returning everything about in the file, I could just simply return the file name by saying. So the moment you add dots, you can see that a lot of things that can be that you can actually specify for this file. In this case, I want to return just the file name, okay? And that is that. And then we go back and then we make that request again. Then that should actually go through as expected. The question. Question. Before I wrap it up for today. Question. Question. No question. No question.
So I have a question.
All right, ask that question.
This how do you restart your server?
I'm gonna restart my server.
Yes.
So you simply just stop the server by saying Ctrl C, and that should stop it. What happens that mine not stopping? So you can see that this should actually shut down. Yeah, we are echoing in the download. All right, so Ctrl C should actually end your server. So it should actually end your server. But if you are doing Ctrl C and it's not ending the server for you, it's not actually ending the server for you, then you can just simply end close the terminal completely, right? Close the terminal completely, right? But then Ctrl C should end your server for you. So if you give me like a few seconds, then that should take you back to where you can just start typing, right? So Ctrl C will end your terminal, and then you can move on.
So that's the problem. My terminal, when I click on the X in my command prompt, is not closing.
Ctrl X or Ctrl C.
I mean, like I've tried control C, it's not working. So I want to end like go close the command prompt and it's not closing.
Right, this what you do. Have you seen this icon here that we have here on your right hand side of my screen? There is a delete icon there.
Yes.
Right, just click on it and then it will close that for you completely.
So my command prompt is not in VS
VS
Code.
Code.
I'm using, yeah, it's not in VS Code.
Yeah, isn't this man?
Yes.
Click it, close it now.
It's not
Close the
working.
man. If
It's
you
not.
close the command prompt, then not closing.
Yeah.
What is your system specification?
How? I don't understand.
All right, so if it's not closing, then probably your device is hanging at some point. So don't give it like 3 seconds and it should close. It's a Windows application, so it should close. That application have nothing to do with Fast API. So it should close just give it like a few seconds and see if it's closed. But if it doesn't, then I believe you have to free up some space on your device. So I think that your device is lagging. So command prompt is a Windows application and has nothing to do with Fast API. Any other question? Any other question? All right, so there's no other question. So you get to see that in our subsequent classes we tend to be closing quite early because we've grown, right? So the concepts are now becoming easier to understand. So like I said, Fast API is heavily dependent on Python, and which you can see our script is done by. It means that I can still write you can still write your usual Python code inside this file and to still do what execute. So I want to congratulate us for those of us that have stayed this long and have mastered the concept of or have mastered the basics of Python. I believe that you could see that life is getting easier as we climb the ladder. It's getting easier, right? So for the concept of fast API, I don't know where to sync, but for those of us that are still having issues with it, that will sync with time. That will sync with time, right? So, but then if you have questions, do not hesitate. If you can't reach me, please, I give you full right. Hold the class responsibility. Responsible, please. If you can't reach me, hold it. That is their duty. All right. I am. If I'm not available, then I assume that they should be available. Right. And I believe that the reps are Leif Chinazo and Mercy Jackson. Yes, those are the reps, right? If I'm not mistaken. Mercy Jackson, are you still active?
Yes, sir.
So that is you guys rep. So in a case where you're finding it difficult to understand a concept and I am unavailable at the moment, which I will always try to be available. But if it's urgent and I'm not available at the moment, reach out to Messi Jackson or you reach out to where's Chinazon? He was here just a few minutes ago. I reach out to Chinazon. I believe he's also rep as well. All right, so that is that for today's class. And please, I'm begging us. Please let us try as much as we can to do our tasks and submit. Try but your goal should always be to be on the same level with every other people. Right? So try and be on the same level, right? Because we are almost folding up, right? And you see that you've been here for I think over 2 months now. So it means that you're approaching the end of KodeCamp 4.0. So you have roughly about a month of tutoring. So let's talk about 3 weeks of tutoring left, 3 or 4 weeks of tutoring left. And you have about 1 full month of the work to work collaboratively with other team members. And then you cannot function effectively in your team if you are still having problems with Fast API or Python and then you're not asking questions. Ask questions, understand this concept so you can work effectively in your team. Your team members will count on you, so will you also count on your team members. And then they even have the opportunity to work in team. It means that you've completed professional tax 8 on time. Then that should be your last tax. Professional tax 8. You've gone halfway. So it will be so painful that you've gone halfway and then not make and then not make it to the final stage. It's very painful. So this night, tax 5 should drop this night or thereabout. So if you're not on the current stage, please try and be there so you can do what so you can meet up with this tax. Because your main goal now is to finish the professional tax 8 on time and get to be on the final phase. Ebere Ikichuku, you have question? Your hand is up.
Yeah, hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening, ma'am.
Okay, so you asked me to redo my task for which I've done that, so but I've not been graded for the second time.
Ask you to do a tax. Which tax is
Yeah,
this, please? Sorry, because I'm getting a lot of tax, so I can only keep track of those things. Which tax is this?
stage 4, promotional task stage 4.
Professional tax 4. Okay. All right.
So the
So
last one
I
I
would.
did, the last one I
Sorry.
did, I scored 60. So he asked me to redo another one and submit the link to you.
Okay. So is the link in my DM?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'll check that out for you.
All right, sir.
Mr. Duncan, your hand is up. Duncan, your hand is up.
So I have a question concerning tax 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tax.
yeah, that
What's
should be
tax three?
then
Let me stop the recording, please. Just give me a second. Let me stop the recording. I think no longer need the recording.